At the beginning of the movie, we see a gloomy room furnished with various dolls. A car whizzes along a wet road past green forests. A cab driver uses the rearview mirror to look at his female passenger. Waking up, Greta Evans notices this and adjusts her blouse. Soon the heroine's journey comes to an end, and she pulls up to an exquisite mansion. Greta enters the house and is amazed by its decoration. The heroine hears a strange noise and feels that someone is in the house. Greta climbs the stairs and sees a portrait of the Gilshire family, who have hired her to look after their son. The heroine wanders through the house and stumbles upon a child's room with many toys. Suddenly, a man's voice comes from behind, which scares the heroine very much. She meets Malcolm, who delivers groceries to the house. The heroine helps Malcolm lay out the provisions and tells him that it is her first time in England. The man wonders why Greta moved from America, and he offers to tell fortunes on her gum. At first, Malcolm assumes the heroine is a writer who has decided to live in the provinces, where she is fleeing a dark past. A smile slides off the heroine's face, and she asks for closure. Greta decides to change the subject and find out about the family she has fallen into. She is particularly interested in the boy Brahms. Malcolm is evasive and says it's rather difficult to explain everything when Mrs. Gilshire appears in the kitchen. The woman is surprised to see that Greta has taken her shoes off and asks her to put them back on. However, back in the hallway, the heroine cannot find her shoes. Mrs. Gilshire says that it is Brahms' pranks. Greta goes to meet the boy. Seeing a doll in the chair instead of a child, the heroine begins to laugh, believing that she is being played. Malcolm approaches Brahms and talks to him as if he were alive. Mrs. Gilshire decides to explain how Brahms should be treated, dressed, and awakened. Greta learns that she will have to read books to the doll and play music for it. In addition, Mr. Gilshire shows the heroine the rat catcher and tries to explain that their son is always by their side. Greta watches with a strange feeling that grown people communicate with a doll as with a living person. Mrs. Gilshire says that Brahms himself chose the heroine to be his nanny, and therefore she must treat him as she has been taught. At night, the heroine chats on the phone with her friend Sandy. The girl reminds her that Greta needs money, so it is foolish to refuse such a job. In addition, Sandy reveals that Cole is constantly loitering outside her house and asking about the heroine. Greta asks her friend not to give away her whereabouts. In the morning, Mrs. Gilshire cleans up the mess in the nursery that Brahms allegedly made. Before leaving, the couple are very nervous and give Greta a list of tasks, asking her not to forget a single item. Saying goodbye to the heroine, Mrs. Gilshire hugs her again and whispers that she is sorry. Left alone, Greta places the doll on a chair and throws a blanket over it. The heroine begins to unpack and settle into her new home. Greta makes herself a couple of sandwiches and reads in the armchair by the window. As she walks into the kitchen, she occasionally glances at the doll covered with a blanket. Greta pours herself a drink and falls asleep. The heroine wakes up during the night and notices that the blanket has fallen off Brahms. The heroine grabs the doll and throws it into a chair in the nursery. At night, during a thunderstorm, Greta hears a noise and goes down to the portrait. The painted Brahms grabs her by the throat, and then the heroine suddenly wakes up. Greta goes to the doll and sees a tear running down her cheek. The heroine begins to empathize with Brahms, but then realizes that it is just a leak from the roof. Still, however, Greta moves the doll to the bed. Wandering around the house, the heroine discovers a locked entrance to the attic. In the evening, Greta calls a friend when she receives an unexpected call. Someone is silent on the receiver, and the heroine assumes it is Cole. Soon Malcolm arrives at the mansion with groceries. At Greta's request, he tells the story of the real Brahms. It turns out that the boy died on the day of his birth because of a house fire. The heroine is shocked that the Gilshire family has been living with a doll instead of a child for 20 years. Malcolm decides to ask Greta out on a date, pretending it's just a friendly outing. The heroine laughs, but agrees nonetheless. In the evening, Greta is going to a meeting, chatting with her friend. Sandy manages to predict almost every action of the heroine because she knows her well. Greta notices that Brahms seems to be watching her and nervously closes the door. While the heroine is taking a shower, something steals her dress and chain from her. In addition, Greta notices a severed strand of her hair. Nervous, The heroine walks down the hallway and sees the door to the attic open. Armed, Greta goes upstairs and the door suddenly closes. The heroine notices Malcolm's car in the street and tries to shout to him. However, Greta fails and the man, who decides that he has been tricked, drives away. The heroine notices a terrible shadow in front of her and falls. Hitting her head, she loses consciousness. Morning comes. Greta comes to her senses and sees that the scary shadow she saw was just a costume. The heroine finds an old album and looks at the photos of Brahms. At that moment, the door to the attic suddenly opens. Greta goes downstairs and calls her new friend. Malcolm inspects the house and claims that everything is closed, so no one could have gotten in. However, the heroine is sure that during the night she heard strange footsteps. In addition, her belongings are missing. Malcolm suspects that Greta may be sleepwalking, but still stays in the house to make her feel safer. The heroine warmly thanks him for this. In the evening, together with the man, Greta plays billiards. The heroine again asks Malcolm about Brahms. This time the man says that the boy was quite strange. Brahms's father, Mr. Gilshire, had once told him this as well. Malcolm's conversation is piped up through the hearing tube to the room where the doll lies. Talking to a friend before bed, Greta discovers that her younger brother has given away her new whereabouts to Cole after all. Brushing her teeth, the heroine decides to check on Brahms and turns the doll's head aside. The doll unexpectedly turns it back. Greta gets very frightened, but then realizes that it was a nightmare again. Opening the door, the heroine sees in front of her the shoes that someone stole from her on the first day. Looking into the room, Greta sees that Brahms is sitting on the bed, and next to him lie the rules. The frightened heroine runs to her room and realizes that the phone is broken. Suddenly it does ring, and Greta hears a childish voice in the receiver, asking her to follow the rules. The heroine sees another present in front of the door: sandwiches. Greta returns to Brahms and decides to start doing the tasks on his list. The heroine becomes convinced that in front of her is not just an ordinary doll. Meanwhile, the Gilshire couple writes their son a farewell letter. Together they go to the beach and begin to collect stones. Stuffing them in their pockets, the couple look at each other and enter the water to stay in it forever. The unsuspecting Greta continues to take care of Brahms, doing all the tasks on the list except kissing him goodnight. The next day, the heroine is playing the piano for a doll when Malcolm appears in the house with mail and groceries. The man again invites Greta to the city, but she refuses, as she does not want to leave Brahms alone. The heroine stays with the doll and suspects that a ghost lives in the house. Greta throws out the food, and when she returns, she sees that Brahms has moved. The heroine asks Malcolm to return, wanting to show him that the doll has come to life. Greta circles Brahms' location with chalk and goes into another room. When she returns, she sees that nothing has changed. The heroine says that if it doesn't work the second time, then she is crazy and should leave this house. This time Brahms does change his location. The heroine believes that the real boy is imprisoned in the body of a doll. Greta reveals that she too lost a child because of Cole's behavior. That is why she can understand Brahms' parents. Malcolm kisses the heroine and waits for her in the bedroom in the evening. As the couple kiss, someone peeks at them through the keyhole. Then Greta suddenly hears a noise. The heroine finds Brahms in a room where music is playing loudly. Malcolm does not like that the doll is against their relationship. The man decides to reveal something else about Brahms that he has been holding back. Previously, once a week, a girl from town came to play dolls with the living Brahms. One day she didn't come home, and soon she was found in the woods. The police wanted to question Brahms, but when they arrived, the whole house was on fire. Despite the story, Greta refuses to leave and believes that the spirit will not hurt her. The heroine puts Brahms to bed again, and then goes up to the attic and leafs through the album. This time she finds pictures of Emily Cripps, a girl who was friends with the boy. The next day, standing in the kitchen, Greta hears a noise. The heroine thinks that Malcolm has arrived, but suddenly sees Cole in the house. The man is surprised that Greta is looking after the doll and is going to take her home, having already bought tickets. In the evening, Malcolm appears in the house, who strongly dislikes the arrival of the heroine's ex-boyfriend. Greta calms him down and tells him she has a plan. Cole threatens the heroine and promises that he will never leave her. Greta falls asleep crying with Brahms and asks him to protect her. During the night, the doll suddenly disappears from the bed. Cole wakes up because of the drops and calls out for Greta. It turns out that someone wrote, "Get out" on the wall, and in addition, planted rats in the back. Cole doesn't believe the doll did it, but demands that it be given to him. Malcolm wakes up in his car to noise and screaming. Running inside, he sees Cole smashing the doll into a chair. There is a violent scraping sound in the room. Cole assumes the noise is coming from behind the walls and moves toward the mirror. Suddenly it shatters, injuring the man. From a hole in the wall, the real Brahms appears, wearing a puppet mask. He destroys Cole despite the heroine's pleas to stop. Brahms grabs Greta, but she is rescued by Malcolm. To hide from pursuit, the couple hides in the tunnels between the walls, in which the Gilshire son grew up, sheltered from the world. The heroine opens one of the doors and finds Brahms' real room. Greta finds a doll in the form of herself, as well as a letter from Mrs. Gilshire. It turns out that she and her husband have traded their freedom for Greta. Brahms stuns Malcolm at the very exit and demands that the heroine return to him immediately. Greta runs through the forest, but suddenly realizes that she cannot leave the man alone. The heroine stealthily takes a screwdriver and demands that Brahms obey the rules and go to bed. Before going to bed, Brahms demands a kiss from the heroine. Greta takes advantage of this to stick the screwdriver in. Beneath the mask, the heroine sees a face disfigured by the fire. Greta takes Malcolm and leaves the house with him. Joseph, the new owner of the mansion, glues Brahms back together. This is the end of the movie. Thank you all for watching this video to the end. Give this video a like. Write in the comments what you think about this movie, and see you in new videos.